Assalamu alaikum, family. It's your brother Landon X. This is NationTownTV Live. And today we're going to get into a subject that I definitely am excited to deal with, because on NationTownTV, we never really dealt with sports in any kind of way, except for the very first episode for the real NationTownTV heads. As you know, one of our first episodes was about Colin Kaepernick. However, we coming back to the sports topic for the sake of this. Deion Sanders, who took the job at Jackson State University, which is a historically black college and university, he was upset that there were 259 players drafted in this past week's NFL draft, and none of them came out of the HBCU system. So we're going to pose the question: should elite or top tier black athletes strongly consider going to HBCUs? We're going to break down the science of the matter. We're going to go off of facts and not emotion. Should top black athletes come home and go to HBCUs? Let's look at it.
I was told to deliver this message.
And we back. NationTownTV, I'm your brother Landon X. And as I said before, we're going to deal with the topic of my man Primetime. Deion Sanders pointed out how no HBCU players were drafted in last year's draft, and there's actually been a sharp decrease over the last few years in HBCU draftees. It's a deeper issue, and it's definitely not an issue of quality of players. Come on now. Black people that can't play ball, let's be real. But before we get into it, let's start off in the proper fashion. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, to whom praises are due forever. I further bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. But let me be clear, when I say that I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger, I'm speaking of the promised messenger in the Holy Quran in Surah 16, verse 36, Surah 10, verse 47, and then the same one that's described in Surah 14, verse 4, where it says that certainly a messenger would be raised for every nation, and that messenger would speak the language of that people, and that describes none other than the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. When you consider this nation right here, and the definition of nation is simply a group of people, and the messenger is at minimum that messenger, but in fact exalted Christ. But I thank Allah for these two individuals. I thank Allah for these two divine men, because their two hands combined to give us the divine leadership, the divine teaching, and guidance of the criterion, the discernment in our midst. I'm speaking of none other than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in those three great names, I greet the NationTownTV family in the words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out to everybody chiming in. Again, I'm your brother Landon X. Feel free to hit us with your questions and comments as we get through this. We probably won't be on too long, because I'm going to hit this one fast and quick like prime time back in the day. Now, listen, well, he didn't do a whole lot of hitting. He wasn't a tackler for those who followed the NFL. But the topic is not just about Deion's, him being upset about, I can't even say the lack of HBCU players being drafted, but just the non-existence. This is actually the first time in a long time where there was 0 black athletes drafted from HBCUs, which for those who, for some strange reason, may not know, means historically black colleges and universities. And what we're going to do is dig into the actual facts of this and why it's an issue, but also should the top, because every year, one thing that's turned into a big business in college sports, besides college sports in general, the rating system and the recruiting system. I remember, I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm old enough to remember when college recruiting, they really didn't talk about it that much. It was something everybody knew happened. It was something that now they have magazines that are sitting right on a magazine rack, right next to Time magazine, right next to Sports Illustrated, right next to Essence magazine. Right in the middle, you'll see a recruiting magazine. And now you have websites like 24/7 Sports and other ones that have these rating systems. They always had a rating system for young athletes, always did, but now it's really a big business, and they make a big deal out of it. And it's like the off-season interest of college football fans when the season is over, and even when the season is still going, because one of the biggest days of college football recruiting is what they call National Signing Day. And now I think they have 2 National Signing Days. One that's late in the year around Christmas, and then one that's like immediately after the season. So it's a big part of college sports now. But the issue is 80 to 90% of these players are black. Out of those black players, 80 to 90% of them come from either working class or poor households. I put it like this: they from the hood is what I'm tiptoeing around the tulips with. They from the hood. So it's not like these are some Negroes from, like you can say, okay, well, in Major League Baseball, a black American player is almost extinct. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but the Barry Bonds, the Ken Griffey's, the Hank Aaron's, they, the Doc Goodens, all them types, they almost extinct. Now, when you see a brother that look like me or you, he from Cuba. He from the Dominican Republic. And he don't even know he black. He's a Sammy Sosa type. But in the NFL and NBA, we all know them brothers. Them brothers come out the same communities that the majority of us come out of. So the question is, should they give more consideration to HBCUs? And if not, why not? Why are they not considering it? Let's dig into it a little bit, but let's go back to the reason for the season, the reason for the topic itself. Brother Deion Sanders, who I have to commend. I got to commend our brother. Some of you, I don't know, like I said, we talking about NationTownTV. So we have viewers that are in their 60s, 40s, 30s. We have teenage viewers. So some of you might not really understand the magnitude of this man that we affectionately call Prime Time. He was also known as Neon Dion because he was so flashy in the way he played. One of the highest paid athletes of his time. He played both baseball and football. His free agency, after he had two major free agencies, he signed a one-year deal with the 49ers. And then, as you can see over there to the left, he played with the Cowboys. His free agency was probably the biggest free agency in sports history before LeBron James. Before LeBron James, Dion set the tone of that, you know, circus kind of free agency. That's how big of a superstar athlete he was. But he made the decision to become the head coach of Jackson State University, which is not a small time program. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But he made that decision. It's a historically black college, Jackson, Mississippi. And let's look into what Dion actually said about the fact that there were 259 players taken in the draft, which is the normal amount that I drafted, and the fact that none of them came from HBCUs. Let's check it out. This is a tweet, I believe, actually this is from Instagram. Dion said, and we have the audacity to hate on one another, talking about black people, particularly the ones in sports, while our kids, he meant children, but it's all right, are being neglected and rejected. I witnessed a multitude of kids that we played against that were more than qualified to be drafted. My prayers are that this won't ever happen again. Get your knife out my back and fight with me, not against me. Hashtag change, hashtag truth, Coach Prime, go JSU Tigers. The SWAC, that's the conference that Jackson State plays in, so forth and so on. So Dion is big mad about this. And I can't really blame him. Shout out to everybody chiming in. This is NationTownTV Live, brought to you by NationTownStore.com. Shout out to all those supporting NationTownStore.com. I see you. This, as I've been saying, this is a flagship year for NationTownStore.com. The support and the love that y'all showing has been overwhelming, literally. But thank y'all for that. Make sure you go to NationTownStore.com and get your personal care products from your brother, from your nation. Nation-made personal care products. And also hit us up and show us some love on Cash App, $NationTown, because 10% of your Cash App contribution goes to the Yes Ma'am program, which is Meal in a Message, where we provide healthy meals, the same kind of meals we eat. My family eats bean soup, bean pie, fruit, vegetables, the whole nine, and also PPE products for the less fortunate and those that just need a little bit of love out in the streets. Make sure y'all hit that up. But Dion was obviously upset. Now let me give you a little bit of backstory. Dion actually has been doing a good job. He's only had the job for, I think, less than 8 months. Because of COVID-19, there was no HBCU football season last year. Now, the NCAA, they went ahead and had a season because it's too much money to miss out on. Black college conferences, the only thing we missed out on, the only thing they missed out on was the Battle of the Bands, because it just doesn't generate the same money. When was the last time you saw somebody walking down the street with an HBCU college football jersey on? Think about it. We don't. We should at least do that. We should at least make a trend of rocking black college apparel. They used to do it for a hot minute in the 90s. I remember watching Martin. I saw Martin with a Morris Brown jersey on. He would have on, I think I saw him with a Grambling shirt on one time. But we used to kind of do it in the 90s, but now you don't see it at all. And that's where all these HCCUs make all their money. Historically, KV colleges, or historically Caucasian colleges or historically cracker colleges and universities. That's where all their money comes from. Not just the TV ratings, but from the actual apparel, the merchandise. So they had a small spring season where they played about 4 or 5 games. He did a decent job, but he's doing a fantastic job in recruiting. Basically, for those that don't know, college recruiting has a 5-star system. If you're a 1-star player, that means you're just good enough to play college football. If you're a 5-star player, they're basically saying if you continue to improve, you're basically an NFL player in waiting. 4-star player means you could be 5-star potential in the right situation, 3-star, 2-star, so forth and so on. Deion has been able to nab a few 3-stars and a couple of 4-stars, which is unheard of recently with HBCUs. 4 stars and up, basically they got a ticket to playing on Sundays, as they call it, playing in NFL. Don't guarantee it, but it means that player is on that right track to be. Now, there have been 3 stars or 2 stars who ended up playing in NFL and having great careers, but 4 and 5-star, those are the top tier players that come out of college. Now, again, shout out to everybody chiming in. Make sure you hit us up with your questions and comments. We won't be on long, but we do intend to be on strong. Shout out to Sister Faith Melissa, straight out of Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson State. I see you. Tedeschi, also Moss number 78. Shout out to Moss 78. And they not just watching because Deion. We doing the story on Deion. I know Tedeschi is a common NationTown supporter. Shout out to y'all. Appreciate y'all watching. Hit us up with questions and comments. Now, like I said, Deion made that jump, and he really surprised me by taking this job. The NFL is not quite like the NBA. One thing you've been seeing in the NBA in the last 15 to 20 years, you'll see players who have almost no coaching experience, and all of a sudden they're NBA coach. You see it with the Brooklyn Nets. Their coach is one of them little white boys. The little dude who won the MVP, the little point guard. I forgot his name. I don't even watch sport and play like I used to, but it was my religion before Islam, so I still got it ingrained in my mind. You also have Steve Kerr, who won a couple of championships with Golden State Warriors. Now, he came on the heels of Mark Jackson, who really built that team, and he basically just kind of sat there and enjoyed all the spoils of that. But Mark Jackson himself was a former player who didn't have a whole lot of experience and then jumped right into the head coaching role. You see that in college. You see that in the NBA. You see it in college basketball. Penny Hardaway coaches Memphis right now. So it's very common in basketball, but it's not common for football for players to just, go from being a player and then all of a sudden they're the head coach of a college or pro program. And that's what Deion did. But for him to choose to go to an HBC, now this is a brother with his name alone, because 60% of the job in college football is recruiting, not X's and O's, not strategies and schemes. Because most of the most legendary coaches in college football, they put a lot of stuff on their assistant coaches to deal with all the X's and O's. Their main thing is recruiting. So Deion could have easily went and got a head coaching job at some white school, maybe not a major white school, not off top, but he could have at least been like a coordinator at a major white school, flexed his recruiting muscle, and I say 2-3 years tops, he would have been one of them. He would have been able to go to his alma mater, which is Florida State, which needs a good coach right now, and he could have been coaching there, and he might still do that. But for him to make that choice to go to his historically black college, it really made my heart smile. But if you go back and watch his Hall of Fame speech, you can kind of see how it led to that. But we ain't gonna go there right now. We don't have the time. But Deion's not the only one. Former Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George, the real sports fans that are watching, That name might ring a bell. It should ring a bell if you're a real sports fan. But he played with Steve McNair, went to a Super Bowl with the Tennessee Titans. He was the Heisman Trophy winner out of Ohio State back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Eddie Joe, and also he's married to one of the members of SWV, if y'all remember them. But anyway, he's now the head coach at Tennessee State. This was a recent thing. So he followed the example of Deion, and I heard that there are rumors that some other coaches, some other well-known NFL players like Ed Reed are strongly considering some head coaching jobs in the HBCU realm, which is a very, very good sign. Now, I say that to say this. While that's a good sign, it still has to come down to the players. What are the players going to do? Why are there not more black top-tier athletes in this day and age going to HBCUs? They used to because they had to. Now, y'all know what y'all watching. I hope you know that this is NationTown TV. Y'all know how I always talk about black economics. I always talk about Black Wall Street, not just because it's my hometown, but because it should be the actual, it should be the blueprint of what we're trying to get back to. But the same dynamic that prevents a Black Wall Street from happening again today is the same dynamic that's keeping the top tier athletes out of HBCUs. Now let me play Muhammad's advocate. I don't want to say devil's advocate, but let me say this. HBCU, historically black college and university, does not necessarily mean historically black founded, black operated, black controlled college and university. Unfortunately, that's just the case. For example, Spelman College, one of the most prestigious HBCUs of young black women. It was founded by two sisters, but the main proprietor of it and the main donor of it was J.W. Rockefeller's wife, who, needless to say, was very, very, very Caucasian. And that's not the only one. A lot of these, Morehouse was founded by Caucasians. A lot of the Howard, Caucasians. A lot of these colleges founded. In fact, the AU system in Atlanta, the only school, if I'm not mistaken, that was not founded by Caucasians was Morris Brown. And they just recently got their accreditation back. And they're constantly having to fight for their accreditation. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. So when we talk about HBCUs, just because 80 to 90% of their students or more are black does not mean it's necessarily ours. However, it is a historically black school. They have not only majority black students, but also majority black professors and majority black staff. Their presidents, 9 times out of 10, are black. The other laborers that run the school, 9 times out of 10, are black. But many of them are subservient to white politics. Now, let's deal with the issue as to why you don't see it happen more. Because on the surface, it seems like you would see it a lot more. And here's why. If you took one of these top tier athletes, and actually if they took the time to just visit a HBCU campus, they wouldn't be impressed by the facilities and the dorms, but they would absolutely be impressed by the atmosphere. There's no atmosphere. I went to a HBCU. There's no atmosphere in the world like it. When they called that show in the 80s and 90s A Different World, they meant that. That's why it was called It Really Is. There's no world like it. It is a wonderful atmosphere. That brother will get down there. He'll see some of that eye candy. He'll see the energy. He'll see the culture. And I guarantee you, unless he was just raised to be a 100% bootlicking, buck dancing, tap dancing coon, even a coon might be melted into a real brother if he just spent the weekend, a homecoming weekend at any of these HBCUs, man. I'm telling you. So you would think that culture and that social culture would be more alluring. But the fact is, a lot of these players never even get the opportunity to experience that. So let's look deeper into this. Shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you. Shout out to Brother Tevis. I see you. Sister Bernadette, all praises due to Allah, out of Flint, Michigan. I see you. Let's dig into the reasons why it is such a rare sight to see top tier. You will rarely see a 3-star or up player even visit a HBCU campus. A lot of these players, first of all, they get letters from everywhere. If you a 2.5-star and up, you just gonna get flooded with letters. And then a lot of the top tier players, they visit they might visit between their sophomore year and their senior year, they might visit 30, 40 schools. But they don't even bother to visit the HBCUs. And it's a deeper reason than just, oh, they're just coons. Oh, their mama and their daddy is discouraging them. Oh, they don't think that the school is good enough. It's deeper than that. And it actually goes far back before high school and even before middle school in some cases. Here's something to consider. I know you've all heard of the term white ice is colder. What white ice is colder insinuates is that people is usually used in the terms of spending your money with Caucasian-owned businesses, which we do literally 96 to 98% of the time. And it is the sole reason that there is no longer a Black Wall Street in any city. That is the sole reason. It's because we spend 98% of our money with our open enemy, with the same people that killed George Floyd, the same people that killed Tamir Rice. You giving them all your money. You went and gave them some money today. It's all right. I know you did. We just fiends. We just like dope fiends when it comes to putting our money in their pocket. But I know you've heard that terminology, white ice is colder. Well, a similar mentality is found in the college sports realm and just in prep sports in general. White ice is colder and white coaches are smarter. Both of these things are equally ridiculous, but this is the mentality that a lot of these young athletes have. White ice is colder, white coaches are smarter, white facilities are better, white campuses are better. You have a better. Now, here's the biggest lie. The facilities thing is pretty much true because that's just actual facts, but we're going to get into that too. But here's the biggest lie. These athletes honestly believe that they have a better chance of playing in the NBA and NFL if they go to a white school. Now, your mind might jump and say, well, they might be right because 259 players were drafted. None of them came from HBCUs. But how many top tier players, when you watch the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, the vast majority of them are former 4- and 5-star college athletes. In fact, almost all of the players who are drafted, the vast majority of the players that are drafted from the first round to the last were all former or majority former 4- and 5-star players that never even considered a Jackson State, never considered a Morris Brown, never considered Bethune-Cookman, never considered Langston. And for the sake of full disclosure and a little bit of bragging, my nephew, I changed his diapers back in the day. My nephew played at Langston University in Oklahoma. He was their quarterback, did a great job, went right into being a student assistant coach, and is now the quarterback's coach at Langston, and he's considering other positions as well, and almost got a chance to coach on Deion's Jackson State squad. So I feel some kind of way about this subject. It hits home. It really does. Now, here's something to consider. Why do they believe that it's not about them? It's not about their ability. It's not about their skill. It's not about their God-given talent. It's about what some white institution can do for them. First of all, can you blame them? We do the same thing. I gotta hit you in the head with that number again. I know y'all know my NationTown followers get tired of hearing it, but 98% of the money are hard-earned money. We got to work harder for our money than anybody on this planet. And we give 98%. And we talking about dispensable income. I'm talking about the money after you pay your rent, after you pay your light bill. We give it to our enemy. So this athlete does the same thing with his ability. He thinks white ice is colder. He thinks my best chance is going to this school. Now, here's why. It didn't just happen in college. He just didn't get this epiphany in the 11th grade that, oh, I should go to Alabama. I should go to Florida State. I should go to Oklahoma. I should go to Texas. I should do this. I shouldn't even consider Morehouse. I shouldn't even consider Howard. It didn't just pop up. For a lot of these athletes, scouts have been watching them, and they've been on the radar since they were as young as 13, 14 years old. A lot of them got recruited into football and basketball middle schools that had so-called elite programs, which were only elite because they had a bunch of players from the hood who get bussed out to these schools. A lot of times they're Catholic schools, and they treat it like mascots on campus. This is happening from middle school on up, and especially in high school. If you go to your typical city, in most cities, most inner cities, most major cities in where black people exist, you would think the hood high schools, the regular hood high schools, not magnet schools, not charter schools, the regular hood high schools would have the best football and basketball teams, right? And no. Because as early as middle school, these white Catholic schools are poaching these players. And when they poach these players out of the hood, mama and daddy and auntie and uncle and all of them, they never even think to say, wait a minute, why am I sending my child to a Catholic school when I raised him Baptist? For some reason, the same religious argument that you might come up with when somebody asks you, hey, why don't you send your child to MUI in Los Angeles, Muhammad University of Islam? Oh, I ain't no Muslim. Why don't you send your child in Chicago? Why don't you send your child to Muhammad University of Islam in Chicago? Great school. Send almost all of their students to college. Top tier grades, top tier GPAs. All prepared, well prepared. Some of them graduate 15, 16 years old. Why don't you send them there? I ain't no Muslim. I don't even know that many black Catholics, but I never heard a black person say, well, you know, they came around here trying to get my son to go to their Catholic school, but hell, I ain't no Catholic. And look at all the bad publicity about Catholicism. I ain't dissing nobody's religion. But come on, man. The one religious body that can honestly claim that they get more bad press than the Nation of Islam is Catholicism. They might tell you that Minister Farrakhan is a racist and an anti-Semite, but what are they saying about Catholic priests? But for some reason, we don't even consider that when we let our children go to their schools. So it starts very early. They start getting poached. Now, there's another issue, and I kind of mentioned it already. Shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you. I see you. All praises due to Allah. I see you, Sister Valerie, Ramadan, Kareem. There's another issue that's somewhat true. Because of these athletes who go to these black athletes from the hood that go to these HBCUs, and the money that they generate, they have top-notch facilities. Now, mind you, when Michael Jordan was making buckets for North Carolina, when Barry Sanders was at Oklahoma State, when a lot of these top-tier athletes were at these HBCUs, it wasn't just paying for the football and the basketball program. It pays for the science program, which is majority white at these schools. It pays for their medical schools. It pays for their law schools. That's why you go to these campuses or you go to UCLA and, oh, wow, it's such a beautiful campus. Yeah, it's bought and paid for by what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and them used to do. What Russell Westbrook used to do at UCLA. That's why they got them facilities. But that is one of the things that lure these players, because when they go on these campus visits, they take them to these state-of-the-art multi-million-dollar facilities, and then they tell them and they convince them, even though this athlete, this young athlete, 15, 16, 17 years old, is dunking on everybody and their mama, scoring touchdowns on everybody and their mama, despite maybe not even having the best facilities. And even before he started going to a so-called elite high school program, he was hooping and balling on everybody back in the hood with no top-notch facilities, with no Caucasian coaching. But when they get up around their late teens, 15, 16, they start getting convinced that the only way you can go from where you are now to the NFL or NBA is that you have to have top-notch facilities. That's a coded way of saying you're wasting your time and your talent by going to some nigger school, because they don't have nothing. They barely staying open, and that's the truth. A lot of our HBCUs, even the ones that were started by Caucasians, are struggling financially. They really are. The minister taught on this. They're struggling financially because not only do their alumni not give them a whole lot of money after they graduate, but a lot of the alumni can't even afford to give a lot of money back to the schools they went to, because they still paying back student loans 30 years after they graduated. And they the last hired, first fired, so hell, they just trying to pay their mortgage. They ain't got an extra 30, 40 G's to give back to their alma mater. They already gave them $100-some thousand that they couldn't afford to give them just to go there. So these schools are struggling. So that's the advantage that these white schools have. And then some of them even have state funding. But look at this. To put it in words, the white schools, the HBCUs, have bigger, better facilities. And when I see this, this reminds me of something. And let me show you what I'm talking about. First of all, like I said, it starts before college. Look at this stadium right here. No, that's not an NFL stadium. That's not where the Dallas Cowboys play. That's not where the LA Rams or the LA Chargers play. This is in Allen, Texas. It is a $60 million high school stadium. Texas is the fifth largest high school Allen, Texas is the fifth largest high school football stadium in Texas. And that's just the fifth largest. You're not even looking at the first largest. That looks better than some NFL teams. That looks better than almost every HBCU stadium. $60 million. If you gave $60 million to the president of Morris Brown or the president of Howard or Bethune-Cookman, they'll pass out. They'll probably just start taking their clothes off, thinking that you want something in return. They'll be so surprised. And let me show you what's going on at these colleges. This is Deion Sanders' alma mater, Florida State. This is their locker room. That's a locker room, people. But this is all bought and paid for by the blood, sweat, and tears of Deion Sanders and Warrick Dunn and Peter Warrick and all the great players that have come through Florida State. This is a locker room. That look like the middle of a mall somewhere. I mean, that's a locker room, people. And this is the University of Oregon. Now, mind you, University of Oregon, I don't even think they done won a championship yet. But look at this. This look like a spaceship. This look like the mother wheel as taught in the Nation of Islam. This is their locker room. And that's paid for with money predominantly from the Nike Corporation. Phil Knight, who's the real owner of the Jordan brand, the founder CEO of Nike, who is an Ashkenazi Jew, just facts, who believe in his belief system, believes that Jesus should be boiling in a pit of his own excrement, which is boo-boo. This is what Ashkenazi Jews believe. It's in the Talmud. You probably never heard of the Talmud. And if you haven't, it's a good reason why. But Phil Knight paid for this. Nike. How did Phil Knight pay for it? Well, Jordan and even Deion, who had a Nike contract, but mostly this right here. What you're looking at is a line stretching around the block outside of a Nike store and it's raining. And everybody in these lines are black. And that's why you have this. See, let me tell you something, family. Let me tell you something. In the Nation of Islam, we believe, well, I'll tell you what we don't believe. We do not believe in a spook God. We believe that Allah God appeared to us in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. But we also believe that even before Master Fard Muhammad, God was never a spook or a spirit. He has always been a man. So we don't believe in a mystery God. So therefore, we don't believe in a mystery anything up under God. But some of us, maybe even some believers, we get spooky about things other than God. It ain't just spookism in God. Well, we spooky about a whole lot. We also economically spooky. We think we can spend all our money, we can stand in line like that, and still have salvation, and still get justice, and still get our 40 acres and a mule, and we giving our enemy every dime in our pocket. Somehow we think that that doesn't have anything to do with this. It don't have anything to do with that. Spookism. But let me go back to this. This is what they tell these young players. Come to OU, come to Texas, come to UCLA, come to USC. You're going to have bigger, better plantation. I'm sorry. Astaghfirullah. Facilities is the word they use. Facilities. And you know what this reminds me of, family? It reminds me of a very well-known teaching. And some people have said, oh, it's based on a lie. This person never existed. I don't care if they ever existed, because the teaching in this letter is 100% based on reality. Whether Willie Lynch existed or not, the Willie Lynch system is exactly how they broke the proud royal African over the span of 64 years into a nigger. It was the Willie Lynch process. Let's look at what the Willie Lynch process said, shall we? Shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you. I see you, Sister Faith. I see you. All praises due to Allah. Let's look at the Willie Lynch system. These are a few excerpts that I got from finalcall.com. He says, I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy. Remember what Dion said. He said, take the knife out my back. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. He goes further to say, distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. He says, but it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Only us. Are you listening? Keep the body, take the mind. And look at that, those words, those three words in bold. Concentrate on the future generations. Remember, I told you college recruiting, college sports recruiting has become an industry within itself. Concentrating on the future players in college sports. Concentrate on future generations. But here's where it really gets interesting. This is where Willie Lynch is telling how to make sure the black woman raises the black slave child. For fear of the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak, independent, but physically strong. Listen, I love all my brothers and sisters in college and professional sports. But that right there is your typical, not all of them, but your typical black athlete in a nutshell. Mentally weak, dependent, but physically strong. Physically, you watch them play. They beating their chest. They dunking on everybody, screaming, ready to fight. You know, they come off so cocky, so confident, even sometimes to the point of arrogance. But when that microphone get in their face and some reporter just happens to ask, okay, Shaquanis Jenkins, you scored 47 points tonight with one eye closed. But tell me this, what do you think about George Floyd? Now all of a sudden, all that confidence, all that braggadocio, all that machismo, he was beating his chest in the game. He was doing a little touchdown dance. Now all of a sudden, off of one question, what do you think about Trayvon? What do you think about George Floyd? What do you think about Eric Garner? What do you think about reparations? I'm just saying, I don't really know, man. And can you blame him? Has anybody asked him that before that? A lot of these athletes don't even do their schoolwork. From middle school on up, they got people doing it for them. Everybody telling them, oh, just keep on playing. Just keep playing. You going to the NBA, you going to the NFL. Ain't nobody telling them no. Ain't nobody putting nothing else in their head but how to dunk and how to score a touchdown, how to make a tackle, how to get an interception. Just work on your 40 time. Just work on your 40 time. And then they get to the league and somebody put a microphone in their face and ask them about their people, the same people that they've been poached away from since middle school, since they were preteens, man. So sometimes we go too hard on these athletes. They haven't been ours since they were 13. They've been told since they were 13 years old, go white, go to the white school, go get a white coach, go to a white university. And then you surprised when he get a white wife. Why? Where's this? He just finishing the job. He just following the process. Mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong. But look at this. Remember, it's about the plantation. I mean, the facilities. Look at this. Willie Lynch says he's going over the things that you can use to divide the slaves and keep them weak. These are some things you can use, the differences in them you can use to keep them disunified. There's intelligence, size, gender, sex, sizes of plantations. Do you know that in slavery, that slave that had a past, there was always the slave who was trusted to make trips into town to pick up goods and so forth for the plantation. And he would have to travel on horseback with a pass. Sometimes they make the Negro walk. But in doing that, he would probably cross paths with another slave who also has a pass. And he'll ask him, what plantation you from? Oh, I'm from Mr. Johnson up the road in Conyers. Conyers. Nigga, I'm from Mr. Wilkins up in Nashville. He trusts me to come all the way down here to you little niggas down here in Georgia to get him some cornmeal. They talked like that back then, but you know what? We still talk like that today. Come on now, let's be real. Let's be real. You out traveling. You might be a Savior's Day. I don't know. You might be somewhere, you run into a brother. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Where you from? Oh man, I'm from Tuscaloosa, Mississippi Study Group. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, me, we coming all the way from LA. We take this pride in these professional sports teams who don't give a damn about us. Almost all of them owned by Jews. Oh man, the Lakers. Oh man, the Yankees. Oh man, the White Sox. Oh man, what have they done for the communities that they play right next to? Some of them play right in the ghetto because the ghettos have the lowest property value, and that's why they build so many stadiums and arenas right next to the hood. You ever wondered why they do that? Because it's cheaper. They right there in the hood, but what have they done for the hood? But we'll go to a barbershop and argue over that. Plantation, size of plantation. So it's already ingrained through epigenetics in that young athlete's mind that when he gets to campus, he's looking for size. He's looking for the fancy facilities. He's looking for this. He's looking for that. Not thinking it comes from this. Not thinking it comes from the exploitation of athletes just like him over the last 50 years or so. No, he's thinking it's just something natural. It's just, you know, some of us are so spooky economically. We think white folks get a check every month just for being white. The government just cut them $1 million a month. Here you go. Congratulations for being a Caucasian. Here you go. That's how spooky we are about economics. We go to another neighborhood and we swoon over, oh, how nice the grocery store is and the selection that they have. How good the schools are, how clean the streets are. What do you think that comes from? We always say white ice is, white ice is colder. You know why white ice is colder? Because, Negro, you paid for the freezer. You paid for the freezer. That's why the ice is so cold. I digress, family. I digress. Let me keep it moving. Let me keep it moving before I get mad. Make sure y'all hit us up. $NationTown. Show us some love. White ice is not colder, promise me. But I promise you. But this also reminded me, shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you. I see you. Shout out to Brother Demeric Devon Muhammad. All praises due to Allah. But this also reminded me of our lessons in the Nation of Islam. We have our supreme wisdom lessons given to us by Master Fard Muhammad. There's something in our lessons that deals with this topic. Did you know? You can go to Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2. Question number 8 begs the question. A very, very popular question in the Nation of Islam. Number 8 says, what makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes? Now, it has a very long answer to that question. What makes? It also asks what brings. But in this question, it asks what makes rain, hail, snow, and earthquake. But then the very next question, number 9, says, why does the devil teach the 85% that a mystery God brings all of this? Because the previous answer breaks down the entire science of rain, hail, and snow. Why does the devil teach the 85%, which is the deaf, dumb, and blind, the poison animal eaters, which is the majority of human beings in America, not just black, but also some white 85ers? And the answer is this: to conceal the true God, which is the Son of Man, and make slaves out of the 85% by keeping them worshiping something he knows they cannot see, invisible. And he lives and makes himself rich from their labor. It says the 85% knows that it rains, hails, and snows, also hears it thunder above his head, but they do not try to learn who is it that causes all of this to happen by letting the 5% teach them. He believes in the 10% on face value. We don't ever ask ourselves when we giving them 98% of our money, where does all this come from? How did it start? Because deep down in our mind, we just thinking, oh, well, they white and we just some niggas. So, in they big old brilliant white mind, they figured out how to do all of this. And nigga like me, I just want a piece. Hopefully I got enough money in my pocket and he'll give me some and overlook my nigga skin. That's how we think. 2021, that's how a lot of us think. But there's an economic science to all of this. Let's keep it moving. We won't be on much longer. Just bear with me for a minute. Bear with me for a minute. Now, I want to prove to you what I'm saying. Alabama right now, the University of Alabama, they basically have I mean, you can't even call it a dynasty. They almost got a damn, they done cornered the college football market. I mean, I think now it's safe to say that Alabama's current run under that Caucasian Nick Saban is probably the greatest run over the last 15 plus years that college football has ever seen. This is 2021. Can you guess what year the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Alabama had their first black player? Now, if you watched the national championship game just a few months ago, 80 to 90% of the players on the field for Alabama was black. 80 to 90% of their players were black. But do you know when Alabama had their first black player, period? For those who don't know, you're probably thinking, oh, probably maybe back in 1940-something, 50-something, 60-something. Nah, man. A brother named John Mitchell in 1971 was the first black player. Prior to him, they did not allow a black player to even play on it. 1971, come on. Some of y'all watching was alive in 1971. This wasn't that long ago, people. 1971, he was the first player, black player at the University of Alabama. He's currently an NFL coach. He's the assistant head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers last time I checked. So 1971 is when they first allowed a Negro on their campus to play football. The Alabama Crimson Tide, I want you to follow me on this. The Alabama Crimson Tide, that's their nickname. They play at a stadium called Bryant-Denny Stadium. They play there now. They played there 60 years ago. Same stadium. But not quite. Remember, Johnny Mitchell first came to campus in 1971. Let's take a look at what Bryant-Denny Stadium. Remember, let me show you the high school stadium again. This is a modern high school stadium in Texas. High school, man, in Allen, Texas. But let me show you what the University of Alabama Stadium looked like in the 1960s prior to them letting Negroes on campus. This is Bryant-Denny Stadium. This is just the 1960s. Now, college football been big business for a long time now. College football has been very popular for almost 70, 80 years. But this is what it looked like. And they couldn't even fill up all the seats. Look at all them empty seats. This is the middle of a game. It's halftime. I seen hood high school stadiums bigger than that. This is Bryant-Denny Stadium today. See, here's that law of cause and effect. They hear it thunder. They know it hails and snows above their head, but they do not learn who it is that causes all this to happen. Who causes this to happen? This is who causes this to happen. Here's something else to consider, family. The total athletics revenue reported among all NCAA athletics departments in 2019 was $18.9 billion with a B dollars. Now you might be like, well, Brother Landon, that's all of the programs. That's including tennis and all of that. Most non-football, non-basketball programs at NCAA schools don't even turn a profit. A lot of them are operating in the red, meaning they actually lose money. But it's made up for based on the revenue they make from basketball and football. So that $18.9 billion per year comes straight from the blood, sweat, and literal tears of black athletes. The law of cause and effect. But here's something else to consider. What if all the players, all these top players, started going to HBCUs again? Like they had to 60 years ago. Well, we got a glimpse of it thanks to a pestilence from heaven, as the minister called it. The NCAA lost $800 million in revenue from the canceled 2020 March Madness, the NCAA tournament. In 1 year, because they didn't have the NCAA tournament due to COVID-19, they lost $800 million. Now, this is the same NCAA that does not allow players to get paid. Not a dime. But $800 million in 1 year was lost because of this really confirmed. If you didn't believe it was a pestilence from heaven and that God himself was on our side, this proves it right here. Now, I got another example. To back up what I'm saying. And this example is coming from an athlete who, in my humble opinion, some of you barbershop wannabe Shannon Sharps, wannabe Stephen A. Smiths might disagree with this. But I believe this particular player is one of the closest things we have in this generation of a Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali type mind. One of the closest great athletes we have today to that. I'm not saying he on that level mentally and consciously, but he's one of the closest thing. A brother by the name of LeBron James. What does LeBron James have to do with this? I'm going to use LeBron James as an example. I'm not even going to use the Cleveland Cavaliers, LA Lakers, Miami Heat LeBron James to prove my point. I'm going to use the high school LeBron James to prove my point. To prove that if these players went to black schools, hell, if they went to African schools, hell, if they went to Japanese schools, the people would watch, money would flow into those schools, and in no limit of time, those schools would have those high-tech facilities that they got at Oregon, in Alabama, and Florida State. What does LeBron James have to do with that? Some of you may remember that LeBron James made history before he ever stepped foot in the NBA. He was the first player in his team, his high school basketball team was the first team to be nationally televised on ESPN. First time ever. It was nationally televised. There was so much hype around LeBron as a high school player, 16, 17 years old, that they televised nationally on ESPN, not local network, no, ESPN, and this was before all the Fox Sports Southwest, Fox Sports West Coast, all them affiliate, everybody had direct TV and all that. This was before all of that. 1.7 million people watched it, which brought in millions of dollars of revenue for ESPN. So imagine if these ultra hyped up high school players decided, you know what, let me go to Morehouse, let me go to Morris Brown, let me go to Texas Southern, let me go to Grambling. And this top-notch 5-star player who everybody was expecting to go to Alabama, Florida State, or if he's a basketball player, some people were even expecting him to go to the NBA, and he decided, no, I'm going to go to Clark Atlanta for a couple of years. And everybody's saying he's the next LeBron, he's the next this, he's the next that. You think the sports media ain't going to follow him to Howard? You think they just going to say, oh, he going to Howard, forget him then. Let's go find somebody. You think they going to do that? They'll even do it just to see if he fails. They'll follow him just to see if he fails, just to see if he goes to this school and it don't work out and he don't pan out to be the player that everybody thought he. They would do it they would follow him just for that. And that itself would bring millions of dollars in a year to these black schools. And LeBron proved that in high school, that the people will follow you wherever you go. He wasn't in the NBA. He wasn't in college. He hadn't even officially made his decision on if he would even go straight to the NBA or choose a university. And they came to his high school, aired the whole game live. That was unheard of back then. The only high school game that was always televised was the McDonald's All-Star game, which always has the top basketball players in high school. And hardly anybody watches that, even though almost all of them will play in the NBA someday. Usually at least half of them end up in the NBA. Nobody watches the McDonald's All-Star game. When was the last time you watched the McDonald's All-Star game? Exactly. But 1.7, almost 2 million people watched LeBron. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think he was a senior. He might have been a junior. He might have been a senior. I'm not sure. But that proves that they will follow you everywhere you go. Shout out to everybody chiming in. Brother Kareem Muhammad says, Assalamu alaikum. I want no one to, he said, I want to be able to donate. Also, how can I view without being on Facebook? Well, you can also view it on YouTube. I post it afterward on YouTube. So, but I'm gonna start going live directly from YouTube very soon. I've been telling y'all that we're about to move out of Facebook. The time is coming. It's just like separation. It's just like the hereafter. It's coming. But yes, brother, right now, Facebook is the main hub that we're on. All praises due to Allah. Brother said, keep spitting. All praises due to Allah. Brother Kareem said, I try to tell people about LeBron's greatness. He is great because he had a lot of hype on him, man. And usually athletes crumble under that kind of hype. They've been calling him the chosen one since he was in high school. He made the cover of Sports Illustrated in big letters, the chosen one. He was 16 years old and he lived up to it 100%. And I just love the fact of how conscious he is. He's not perfect. You know, he says he sounds like a brother who's climbing out of this Caucasian pit that he's been thrown in since he was 14. But he's aggressively climbing out of it, and he's wide awake. He wide awake. He just need a brother to pull him. He need a Rockman. He need somebody like The Rock who pulled Muhammad Ali into the Nation of Islam. Not Malcolm X. It was our brother The Rock. He just need a rock to get his hands on him. And I'm telling you, he will be unequivocally our version of Jim Brown, Kareem, and Muhammad Ali. And it ain't about him switching his religion or nothing like that. He just a wide awake, proud black man. Beautiful black family. You know, his children ain't, I ain't gonna go there. But he's a good look for our people. And all of those who want to sit around having Michael Jordan, LeBron debates, and you discounting them just because he beat your team in the playoffs, so you mad at him. Come on, that's borderline coonish. If an athlete, if their blackness is shining just as bright as their athleticism, you should focus more on their blackness than anything else. I don't really like LeBron as a player. I'm gonna be honest. But I'm starting to realize that a lot of some of my favorite players that I grew up idolizing are some straight coons. And we didn't know it back then because all they did was dunk basketballs. All they did was score touchdowns. But I'm hearing them with all these social issues popping up. People are putting microphones in their faces and asking them. And I mean, they sounded like Step and Fetch It. But I digress. But shout out to NationTownTV producer, Sister Shauna Joy. Put that information about the donation. You can donate to Cash App, or you can go to NationTownStore.com to donate and just scroll to the bottom of the screen and you will see a donation portal. That's for YouTube. But if you go to NationTownStore.com, scroll to the bottom, you will see the option to donate. All praises are due to Allah. But as my brother Tevis Muhammad hit me up via Facebook Messenger, he mentioned how so many players in the past did go to HBCUs. And it's because a lot of them had to. A lot of them had to. Some of these players I'm about to show you really didn't have to, but they did. I'm not talking about some player. I ain't talking about no leather helmet player with no pads, no face mask era. I'm not talking about that old. In recent history, we had all-time great black players in the NFL who went to historically black colleges. And I'm going to run through a few of them. And some of y'all might be surprised if you didn't already know. Let's start with this one. This is Shannon Sharpe. Shannon Sharpe has two great careers. He was arguably one of the greatest tight ends in the history of the NFL, playing for the Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens. But now he's most known for this. He's a very notorious and sometimes even controversial and somewhat wide awake black man. I say somewhat because hey, you never know sometimes with these people. But he does tend to take the more conscious route on a lot of issues. But, you know, he's a very funny personality on Fox Sports, alongside that one funny looking cracker that looked like the Crypt Keeper. I forgot his name, nor do I care. But yeah, Shannon Sharpe. He went to Savannah State, which is a HBCU. Speaking of television, Michael Strahan from Good Morning America, Hall of Fame defensive end with the New York Giants. He went to Texas Southern, HBCU. And may Allah be pleased with Steve McNair, one of the greatest black quarterbacks in NFL history. You look at the NFL now, hell, it looks like most of the best quarterbacks in the NFL are black. And this is one of the black quarterbacks that paved that way, Steve McNair. He was recently murdered. Well, not recently. I think it was about 10 years ago. But not only did he go to Alcorn State, but he was also the league MVP one year. Took the Tennessee Titans to the Super Bowl, I believe. Great player, great player. He played with Eddie George. And then, and it ain't no argument about this, Jerry Rice, he's the best wide receiver in NFL history. I don't care what you're going through. We ain't gonna turn this into a barbershop on NationTownTV, but he is the best to ever do it. And he went to Mississippi Valley State. Now notice all these pictures are in color. I ain't showed you no leather helmet, no one-bar face mask. I ain't showed you. These are players that have all played in the last 20 years. They were on NFL teams within the last 20-something years. Now, another arguable great of all time, GOAT of all time, one of my favorites. The first video game I ever played, the first football video game I ever played was Tecmo Bowl. Now, some of you cornballs love playing with the Raiders with Bo Jackson, which was cheating on Tecmo Bowl. I like to play with the Chicago Bears and play with Walter Payton. He's definitely pound for pound, overall, arguably the greatest running back in NFL history because he wasn't just a good handoff running back. He was also a good receiving running back, great receiving running back, great handoff running back, one of the best to ever do it. He went to Jackson State, the same school that Deion Sanders is coaching at. So that proves that it's not some kind of impossibility that, oh, if you... Now, mind you, these black schools that I just named, Alcorn State, Jackson State, Mississippi Valley, Texas Southern, if the facilities are not cute today, what do you think they look like in the 80s, in the late 70s? What do you think Jackson State's facilities look like when Walter Payton went there? They probably had one dumbbell, one dumbbell. You know what I mean? They had to share cleats, share shoulder pads. When they come out the game, they had to take their shoulder pads off, give it to another player. I'm just playing, but come on now. But did that hurt Walter Payton as an athlete? Did that make him any slower? Was he not running circles around the entire NFL for, what, 15 years? Did you watch him play on the 85 Bears? The man was unstoppable. Jerry Rice. Come on, he's the best to ever play the position of wide receiver. Did going to Mississippi Valley State make it where he couldn't catch passes from Joe Montana and Steve Young? I think he won, what, 4 or 5 Super Bowl rings? Did that stop him from winning 4 or 5 Super Bowl rings? So you can miss me with that, oh, well, you know. And scouts, listen, like I said, I got a nephew that coaches. And every assistant coach in these college teams, they got to do recruiting as well. And listen, man, scouts and assistant coaches, they will go anywhere to find talent. In fact, you make a name for yourself in that business when you find the players that nobody was checking for. You don't make a name for yourself by going after somebody that's a 5-star recruit and got Alabama and Florida State and Oklahoma and USC chasing them. You don't make no name for yourself. Everybody doing that. But when you go and find a Jerry Rice, when you go and find a Terrell Owens, when you go and find a Shannon Sharp ain't even the best player in his family. Sterling Sharp, his brother. But they went and found Shannon Sharp and went on to be a Hall of Fame. Everybody I just showed you are Hall of Fame players. A very small percentage of NFL players even get considered for the Hall of Fame. So don't tell me that you got to have a certain school, certain equipment and all this foolishness just to be a great NFL player. These black athletes already have everything they need. Yeah, they need more coaching, more tutelage. But who better to show them than their brother? That's why it's so beautiful what Deion is doing, what Eddie George is doing. Because that's going to improve the thing now. Let's consider this. Before we get up out of here, what will it take? What will it take to change the paradigm and get these young black athletes to at least, because I'm going to tell you, if you just get them on campus, man, if you just get one of these 3-4 stars to just come to Grambling, just come and visit, just one day, have them come down on homecoming at any HBCU. You're going to have a hard time getting them to leave, much less play there. They're going to be like, man, y'all can leave me here. I'm all right. I'm good. I'm here, man. And not just the females, but just the culture, man. It taps into your blackness. No matter how you feel about HBCUs, when you step on campus, I don't care which one, it taps into your the culture of black intellect, of black history. It just digs into your soul, and it would capture these athletes, but they never even come around. And these white coaches in white institutions make sure of it. They make sure of it. So what will it take? What will it take? Well, one thing that it would take, other than having high-profile players like Deion come and coach, the same thing has to happen on the player side, not just the coach's side. It would have to be something similar to this. My real sports fans that are watching, you know what you're looking at. I ain't even got to explain it. You looking at Jimmy King. You looking at Juwan Howard. You looking at Jalen Rose. You looking at Chris Webber. I always forget the fifth brother's name. Somebody help me out. The fifth brother on the Fab Five. You looking at the Fab Five. This is arguably the best recruiting class in college basketball history. All 5 of these brothers were considered top-notch recruits. And they could have went to any school by themselves and would have been the star by themselves at any other school. But these brothers came together and said, you know what? Instead of you going over here and me going to Duke and you going to Michigan State and you going over there, how about we all come to the same school? And they did it at Michigan. Now, mind you, Michigan was a respectable college basketball program, but it was not considered really that elite. But I know 3 of the players, Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, who's in the middle. Juwan Howard in the middle is actually the current coach at Michigan. And Jalen Rose, they're from the Detroit area. They're from the Midwest. So they all knew each other. They played AAU together. They, you know, a lot of these players, these prep players, when they go to college, that's not their first time meeting some of their fellow players and their opposition. They went up against each other in high school, AAU. So they knew each other. So they all decided to go to this one school. Now, this is a white school, of course. But to really change the paradigm, the college football, black college basketball needs a Fab Five situation where 5 top-tier, 4 or 5-star high school football players decide, let's all go to Grambling. Let's all go to Morris Brown. Let's all go to Jackson State with Deion. Let's all go to Tennessee State with Eddie George. And the same thing on the basketball side. They would have to do that kind of thing, but that's not the only reason I'm showing you the Fab Five. Pay attention to the brother second from the left. That's Chris Webber. Now, the sports fans that are watching, you know full well who Chris Webber is. The rest of y'all may not know. Chris Webber was the best out of those 5 players. The brother, dark-skinned brother in the back, second from the left. Chris Webber was a phenomenal player. He became, I think he's in the Hall of Fame in the NBA, or about to be. He was a great NBA player as well. For those that don't know, Michigan ran into a scandal after these players left, where it found out that some of them took a little bit of money, took a little bit of bribes. Some money was given to some families. Mind you, remember that number I showed you, $18.9 billion a year. But if a player so much as takes a cheeseburger as a gift from somebody, he can get disqualified from playing in the NCAA. Chris Webber, on the ESPN documentary about the Fab Five, he told a story that broke my heart, and I'm going to close with this. He was talking about when he was talking to one of, they call them boosters. These are individuals who usually have a lot of money, and they help these college programs. And here's what's sad. A lot of these boosters are black sometimes. But these are brothers or individuals who have money, and under the table, they give money to these athletes so they can go to certain schools. So Chris Webber is walking through the mall somewhere in Detroit, and he's with a booster. He's talking to a booster. He said he had $15 to his name. He was broke as hell. He could hardly afford to buy something to eat. And he walking with this booster, and this booster is telling him, hey, you know what I mean? You know, this is the same booster that basically paid him and his family to go to Michigan. So he's coming back to this booster, talking to him about giving him some more money because he broke as hell. The whole world knew Chris Webber's name. But they walking through this mall, and Chris just happened to look up. Mind you, he got $15 in his pocket. He happened to look up, and he saw his Michigan number 4 jersey hanging in the window of a Foot Locker. Now, the rule was, and still is, you can sell a player's college jersey for profit, but you can't put his name on the back of the jersey. But if you grew up in the 90s like me, and you saw a Michigan jersey with number 4 on it, just like a North Carolina jersey with 23 on it, you knew who it was. And if you went to school the next day with that jersey, everybody be like, oh, you got that new Chris Webber jersey, that college jersey. So he's standing here illegally talking to a booster, $15 in his pocket, depressed, because they had just lost the NCAA championship game. And he know he doing something he not supposed to be doing, but he got to do it because he broke. And he look in the window and see Foot Locker and Nike and everybody and their mama making money off of his blood, sweat, and tears except for him. Just that alone should make young athletes consider, hell, if you're not going to get paid, you might as well go somewhere where your people benefit. You know how many scholarships it would generate at black schools if a Deion Sanders type player, a Chris Webber type player, a Eddie George type player went to these schools today in large numbers. These you wouldn't watch another down of Alabama football if Alabama fielded 11 Caucasian players from the hills and cave sides of Alabama. You wouldn't waste your time watching that game. You might watch it for 5 minutes just to laugh, and then you'll be like, "Oh damn, the Prairie View game is on. Oh man, the Morris Brown game is on. Let me turn this foolishness off." So just think about that. Think about that. I'm going to close with this, family. As we get up out of here, we like to try always to close with the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And this time it's going to be short and sweet. Shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you. All praises due to Allah. But with that said, family, I appreciate y'all chiming in. I'm going to leave y'all as I greeted y'all in the words of peace. But we're going to close out hearing from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Ramadan Mubarak and Assalamu Alaikum.
College for simply to play sports. The world never honors, the world of wisdom never honors basketball players. The world of wisdom never honors football players. The world of wisdom never honors song and dance men. You've been clowns and buffoons and sport figures too long.
I was told to deliver this message.